this is it. This is your call. Pull the cosmic trigger and get weird things started.
Good evening, listeners, brave navigators of the enigmatic and the concealed. Have you ever felt the pull of the unanswered, the allure of the mysteries that shroud our existence? For more than a decade, a unique comic publisher has dared to dive into these mysteries, unafraid of the secrets they might uncover. This audacious entity is Paranoid American. Welcome to the mystifying universe of the Paranoid American podcast.
Launched in the year 2012, Paranoid American has been on a mission to decipher the encrypted secrets of our world. From the unnerving enigma of MK-Ultra mind control to the clandestine assemblies of secret societies. From the awe-inspiring frontiers of forbidden technology to the arcane patterns of occult symbols in our very own pop culture. They have committed to unveiling the concealed realities that lie just beneath the surface. Join us as we navigate these intricate landscapes, decoding the hidden scripts of our society and challenging the accepted perceptions of reality.
Folks, I've got a big problem on my hands. There's a company called Paranoid American making all these funny memes and comics. Now, I'm a fair guy. I believe in free speech, as long as it doesn't cross the line. And if these AI-generated memes dare to make fun of me, they're crossing the line.
This is your expedition into the realm of the extraordinary, the secret, the shrouded. Come with us as we sift through the world's grand mysteries, question the standardized narratives, and brave the cryptic labyrinth of the concealed truth. So strap yourselves in, broaden your horizons, and steel yourselves for a voyage into the enigmatic heart of the Paranoid American podcast, where each story, every image, every revelation brings us one step closer to the elusive truth.
Marcus Allen. What do I call you? I'm just gonna call you all of that.
Randomize it.
So we left off on a really interesting subject that I'm kind of a well-known skeptic, but you've got me on this one. This one is interesting, and I want to hear the rest of it out. And I want to talk about Christian occultism and how Christianity makes occultism seem cooler than it actually is. And I want to talk about these chairs and tables that were flipped upside. Can you bring us back to this moment where you were like running back to your car? Where were you going? Why were you running back to the car? Set us back up again.
Yeah, we kind of left on a cliffhanger. I kind of gave you enough sense to want to chase down a trail, and that's not like a red herring thing because I'm still working through this myself. So this is why I'm here today with you, because these events happened previously. So recently now, a lot of people are getting into the idea of retrocausality, and is time a straight line, or is it sort of the spiral? Does it spiral inward? Does it spiral outward? This type of thing. And reminded of the seasons, we had the conversation saying that I'm in Minnesota, so now that it's November and the ground is freezing, that's clearly a different season. So to go back to a different season in my life when I was attending a church youth group, I was, 12, 13 years old, and the church youth group was the cool thing to go to, apparently. I mean, as far as my worldview understood at this time, I would be graduating into the next phase of my life, which would be in this youth group setting where there would be people older than me and they'd be more influential. So I'd be able to absorb their interest, music, culture, whatever, and then be able to sort of balance my own mental checkbook to say, do I like this? Do I like that? Sort of to find an identity.
Was this all Christian music that you were being introduced to, or is there like other mainstream stuff that they were sneaking in? Like anything, in other words, anything that I'd recognize, because I wouldn't recognize any popular like Christian music unless it was like DC Talk.
Right. So the popularity of DC Talk was something that other people knew. But as far as other music, it would be like the Tooth and Nail bands.
Go on.
MXPX.
Okay. All right. So we've got a date range almost. We're talking like late 90s, early 2000s.
Well, this is the thing with like cassette tapes and then CDs. I didn't know what was new or old because you'd go to the Bible bookstore and they'd all be on the same shelf. So I'd base things off of the cover art. So I have something for an example here. This is a Lawrence the Cat and the Bible.
Okay. I've never heard of Lawrence the Cat. So is this a music thing? Is it based on a cartoon or a direct to VHS thing?
Well, I talked about Carman earlier, and this is a Carman property.
Okay. So he was into occultism and also making like children's mascots.
I don't know if you can kind of see him in this picture. It says Yo Kids. It's like Carman presents Yo Kids. And then it would be this cat.
Lawrence the Cat and the Bible.
Yeah. Right. So I know that you're interested
tell me this is rap.
A lot of it is rap. It's very cool. It's like this is just one of the artifacts I have. And if I don't have it, then people won't believe that it's even a real thing because it sounds so ridiculous. Side note, there was also this singing songbook character called Salty. Do you remember Salty, the singing songbook?
Of course I don't know.
Who was this guy who dressed as a songbook, like a hymnal. So like his front would be the spine, and then he'd turn around and it would be the back of the pages, and he'd be like out dancing and teaching children music. Of course, these would be Christian songs.
The Salty name's throwing me off though, because salty doesn't imply happy or anything.
Psalms.
It's like I get that. Oh, was it like PSALM
and Psalms? So like the Psalter, the Psalm.
I hope somebody goes to hell for that, and I'm being genuine about that judgment.
So again, this is the humor of looking back and understanding that the perception of it was different than it is now. So you are immediately picking up on the joke that you call a guy salty and he has to be happy and sing the kids. Well, there's that dichotomy of, does he really want to be doing this job? Is this just a paycheck? It's like the same thing with a character named Bible Man. Apparently was a serious adult actor, maybe in actual adult films, and he had the musculature to play a hero, but did they do a full background check on the guy? I don't know.
Okay, I like the backstory that we're giving. This is all about the children's cat Bible song. I'm gonna have to look this up. So is this? I assume this is something you could find on YouTube or Internet Archive.
A lot of it has gone to Internet Archive, but again, to have the physical thing in the hand is like, yeah, this is.
Have you looked it up on eBay to see if that's even going for anything?
Oh, for the rarity. No, I haven't even bothered with that, because for me, again, it's not a collection of items I want to have. It's just a collection of items that somehow are still around that haven't been thrown out yet.
I like this because before we talked last time, I hadn't even heard of Carman. And Carman, the fact that Carman existed and the aesthetic that he was able to do and the content, I'm so happy that existed out there. And I'm a little bit bummed for myself that I guess I didn't find it at a point when I could have appreciated it much earlier on. And not even in a mocking way, in a way that would have been like, wait, I'm Christian and I've heard about some of this stuff, but I didn't know about this level of detail. Like it had more detail than a Marilyn Manson album would have in terms of occultism, no?
I would say absolutely, because what we talked about last time was the fact that a lot of the occult mechanisms that are pushing forward, a lot of the fuel from that comes from religious figures who are saying, don't look at these things. So while they're in opposition to it, without it, there would be no progress made on either side.
Do you think that there's, at any point in the future, like a Christian adaptation of occultism that embraces it more? Because it seems that it can get close. Like my best example, I think, is Catholicism, where they've got a lot of the occultism in there, and if they just kind of add a few extra things, you've kind of got like an OTO ritual on your hands.
Certainly. Recently, the Pope, the current Pope, I don't know what his real name is or what his Pope name is, but he was seen touching this ice stone figure.
Where's the?
I don't know the location. I saw it on social media. Maybe it's AI, but enough publications have reported on this. But it was silly to me because I was like, that should have been a block of dry ice. So the Pope was recognizing the fact that there might be a climate and that climate might be changing due to man. But the question in my mind is, if there are so-called acts of God that are weather events that are acts of God and not acts of man, then man just has to go along with it. But now here's the Pope saying that man might have some sort of responsibility as to whether or not the polar ice caps are melting.
Okay, I didn't know this. So he's like with Al Gore when he's saying this, I assume?
No, this was very recent, within the last few weeks.
Okay, very topical.
Right, right.
I guess that's kind of been the lean, right? Like especially the Catholic Church has been leaning more and more into green energy, and I don't even know. Like, I wonder what their stance on AI is, because I guess that would be in complete opposition to green energy, right?
Well, I think it's just the resonant symbol of this ice cap, this thing that it means something different to me than it does to you. But we see this symbol, and now the Pope is in some ways trying to wrangle it together to be like, this is our Catholic perspective on this specific issue, using a touchstone, which looks like a block of dry ice that hasn't been cracked yet. So it's not giving off the sort of smoky effect. So it looked like some plastic set design with like LED lights inside of it. And I was thinking, we could have done a much better job of making this thing look like it's alive, like it's melting, like there's something inside of it, that once it melts, there might be a figure. Did you ever have those soaps that had little plastic figures in them? And then you get rewarded for using the soap by it just dissolves away and there's a little figure.
I think mine were mostly dinosaurs, though. They would just turn out to be like a plastic dinosaur.
Some little Chotsky or figure, and I'm like, I got them all over here. Like this
stuff that doesn't exist anymore because enough people in the 80s and 90s hurt themselves on them. Yeah, something that looks exactly about the size and the shape of that.
So you'd use the bar of soap, and all that would remain would be the dinosaur, and then
it looks like an egg. Like the soap looks like an egg usually.
Yes, yeah, because it would have to be enough casing to cover the thing. So this is sort of like my active imagination as a child, to see any simple thing could be so influential to me as an adult that I wouldn't even know about it. So this is why when it comes to raising children, people want to bring them to a Christian church to say that if I raise up a child in the church, that's the track we'll set them on, and then they will continue along that track because we will have sort of built the track, said this is a train you're on, this is the direction to head, and this is your life's course. But I'm not a train guy, so I didn't get on the track.
Well, and I don't know if that necessarily works anyways, right? Because like the typical thing you go through as a teen is to reject everything that's been presented to you so far. It's like, oh, there's a whole nother world out there, so let me see if there's something that's the exact opposite of what I'm familiar with that might also be interesting. So I think that there's all, like, if you try and train your kid to be a certain thing or think a certain way, it could just as easily backfire, like 50-50 almost, right? Like it's an absolute crapshoot.
It is like flipping a coin. You don't know which direction it's going to go in. And it's going to be like the Schrodinger's cat, where it's like dead and alive at the same time, depending on other factors. And the other factors aren't necessarily
true, though,
MTV.
then, like, do you even have any influence at all if it's just like a flip of a coin? Like, you might as well just not.
Well, there's the definition of magic that we have to brush up against, where if you recognize that we live in a magical world and the definition of magic has something to do with recognizing my own will and then being able to bring change to my own reality. In church,
but if you're talking about raising a kid and introducing them to like a religion, for example, to kind of shape what their path would look like.
Well, I would extend that umbrella of religion to be also all cultures. So the way
Of
that
course, yeah.
holidays
Religion's
are,
a good, like, laser focused version of that, as an example.
and then it expands outward because it's like the hierarchy of decisions. Like, if our church doesn't celebrate Halloween or Christmas in these ways, are we going to be heretical for participating in these events in our own ways? So to have like a private Christmas ceremony at home would be different than going to the church and celebrating Christmas there.
What do you think about heresy? For or against?
I'm for creative rebellion, and not doing a rebellion in such a way that it is like so against the grain that it makes everybody angry. Because there's some people that get rebellious, and then everyone just like, man, that is cringe.
So let me give a practical example.
Mhm.
There was the artist that got famous for submerging a crucifix into like a huge vial of urine or something. Yeah, piss Christ, right?
Yeah, right.
So in your mind, is that heresy or is that just cringy? Is there like a line between those two?
At that point in time, the crucifix submerged in human urine was going to be a catalyst for talking about the culture at large. So the function of the thing, depending on the artist's and author's intent versus how it's received, could have various influences by other sides. So I'm talking about controlling the narrative.
Let me ask you on, like, let me just split hairs a little bit.
Yeah.
If the artist had done that in private just for their own, I guess, fun and never even told anyone about it, so therefore it wasn't about starting like a national dialogue, is one of those versions more heretical than the other?
Now you're talking about splitting heresies.
Yeah. Damn you. Damn you, Marcus.
I'm here to unite them, basically, is what I'm trying to speak about. This idea that we want to sort of unite everybody under a symbol, under an art, under a creative expression, going to a movie, having a milestone cultural event, versus having our own screens in our own private lives and being separated. So I'm thinking today in terms of performative meditation, where we're talking young people at this point, and young people, the iPad generation, you give a 3-year-old a young iPad and YouTube, and they're just going to scroll through it, and it's going to make all the sounds and light up, and it's going to alter their brain, and they're going to do different things. So when they feel anxious, then they think, well, the reason I'm feeling anxious is because I'm getting too much information. So it's an information overload. And to self-soothe, I might just go sit in a corner, cross my legs, and focus on my breathing. We would call that maybe meditation or prayer or time out, depending if it's punishment. It's like, you need to have a go time out. So these young people today are giving themselves time out while they're setting up their camera to record them sitting still in a corner for a period of time. So at that point, because of the observer effect and knowing that it's being recorded, are they really doing the meditation? Are they really doing the inner work? Or are they just sitting still and smiling and making mug faces for the camera? This type of thing.
Well, hear me out. Out of those two options, right? The person that would just go and sit down and meditate versus the person that would set up a camera, hit record, and then go and sit and meditate. The latter of those would seem like it would require a higher level of skill and enlightenment in order to continue to actually meditate, even though they've got that observer effect. Like, they transcend whatever, metaphysical property that enacts the observer effect. If they can transcend that, then technically they're training at a much higher level than the person that's not setting up the camera.
And this returns to your question, the heresy of contemplating the meaning of a crucifix covered in human urine, the Piss Christ art piece. If that becomes the focus of contemplation during a meditation, It might even just be like you're in an art museum and you sit down and you stare at a painting for a while, and then you're just looking at the colors and your eyes go wonky and cross, and you see something that isn't there, but then you've gotten something out of it, and it might not be what the author intended for it to be. But the personal experience on an individual level is different from a church congregation focused on a symbol together during a worship service. So this is the individual versus the group, and now we're talking about how to be an individual who belongs to a group but remains an individual through their own creative rebellion, and not make everybody angry to the point where you stick out so much that you purposely become the outsider and then no one likes you on purpose.
But that archetype still has to exist, no? Like there has to be someone that plays that role, that defines what the other pole is, to like actually go out there and stand there with that flag so that everyone else can be like, oh, there's the flag.
And we did talk about the so-called See You at the Pole event in front of high schools in America, where Christian teenagers stand around the American flagpole on their school campus to unite in prayer. So in that way, literally standing around a flag to pray for the nation, to pray for the school, to want to have a positive effect, in their minds, a positive effect on their school, to claim it for Christ.
There's like an interesting relative theory at play here, right? Like even when we just first started talking and you mentioned like all the cool kids went to this youth camp, and it's like, man, like you're already inside of a microcosm, a bubble of sorts, for that to be the cool thing to do. And now we're talking about another example of Christians that are standing around flagpoles. I assume, at least how I'm interpreting you bringing that up, is that is these outsiders that are literally saying like, hey, here we are, and as opposition to everything else that's going on. So we're at least one version of this polarity. But that again is inside of like a microcosm, right? Like in one school on the West Coast, maybe, then that might be weird to have those kids grouped around. But if you go in the Midwest, or if you zoom out and you look at the US versus say Europe, now it's really like anyone doing that would be a complete outsider. But it all seems to be completely relative as to what would ostracize you, right? There's some groups that if Marilyn Manson stepped in the room, forgive the continued example, but it's like if Marilyn Manson stepped in the room, there's some groups of people that would be like, look at this poser, you know, versus if he went into other groups, it would be like, oh my God, the Antichrist just showed up.
And again, Marilyn Manson is a symbol that's etched on my mind at a very suggestible period in my life.
What age? What was the first time you heard or saw Marilyn Manson?
Probably 1998, 99. Do you remember around the release of Final Fantasy VIII?
No, I was hardcore 7. I think I didn't make my way all the way through 7, so I didn't pay attention to 8, but I know the time period we're talking about.
Okay, so again, time being what it is, can only do one thing at a time. I remember standing outside of a Funko-Land, it later became GameStop, but a game store that carried the media, and in the window they had the poster art for Final Fantasy VIII, and it had this this woman, this figure, and she had like this ship's helm behind her. So she's kind of like the ship of state. So she's kind of steering the drama behind the scenes. And then there's the characters that are going to be in it. And then juxtaposed right next to it was that Antichrist Superstar, where Marilyn Manson is the androgynous figure, alien with the kind of the dolphin skin. So that image was next to Final Fantasy VIII, which I think was next to probably the Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time poster. So this is
a music/video game store.
Correct. So that being the symbol, now if I would have seen that symbol on the wall, I might have thought, well, maybe this is not a Bible bookstore. Maybe I shouldn't go into it. But this is the place to get used video games, so I would go into there. So in that way, that's how culture might have seeds of destruction, because the Antichrist Superstar clearly is not the Christ Superstar. So it's not Jesus Christ Superstar. But not knowing the cultural reference to what it was about. It's just going on vibes, right? So as a kid, you're like, your intuition, your gut feeling, does it feel like it's going to have a devastating effect on my psyche? Is it my aphantasia, my images in my mind that are just going to be like so resonant? I don't have control over that. So that's why there's the idea of like guarding your eyes against certain images, because of the strength of the image, you won't know until you feel the effect of it.
I can agree with that. I mean, because that could apply to something that you see out in the real world. It's just a series of images, right? So there's definitely people that can see things that will change them for life. Do you think Marilyn Manson is one of those things at that kind of level?
I mentioned Marilyn Manson alongside of Final Fantasy VIII, knowing that at that time in my life, I would not be open to exploring that media. But in the future, I would be able to do so at my own time. So there's this idea of like a hype cycle release to say like what's coming out this week, and you want to be with the current releases versus being with the evergreen sort of media that is more of a timeless quality.
Okay, so we've kind of got a good established time period that brings us back to this event that I want to finish out. You go
with a mental image that I'll never forget. So the mental image of a house in disarray is a very striking image due to the memory of the thing. So the brief reminder is, I think I have like, let's see, I didn't have cell phones then, so I didn't really know what the time was, but I did have, my Bible. You're seeing some Skillet stickers, Project 86, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles came out in 2003, so that was like a newer thing. I might have had a different Bible at the time, and I'm not even sure if I was bringing my Bible to youth group all the time, but there was something I needed to get. It might have been like I borrowed a CD from someone that I want to listen to, but then I was in the van to go to church. I'm like, oh no, I'm not going to see this person for 7 more days. And I promised that I would return the CD to then get another one so I could listen to it. This is how I get the media. I'm like, hold on real quick. I need to go back to my room. So I unlocked the door, ran back upstairs, and things were unsettled, shall we say. It was like a game of pick up sticks. You know how you put sticks in a container, you shake them up and then you just kind of drop it, plop. And the way that they fall interlace over each other is like it all happens simultaneously.
What specifically are we talking about? Like
I'm talking
all the chairs, all the tables, or just like certain things that you noticed?
I had shelves on top of dressers, and they all just fell kind of into the center of the room, kind of off center. So like everything that was able to move had moved and sort of collapsed in on itself in the 3 bedrooms upstairs. They weren't that way because I was just in my bedroom, ran downstairs to get in the van, ready to go to church, and remembered, oh, but what I did I mention this happened 3 weeks in a row, 3 Wednesdays in a row?
You didn't mention that. I thought this was a one-time event.
No, it wasn't a one-time event. It happened 3 Wednesdays in a row during the like August, like late August.
And you're what, like 13, 15, 17?
This is like a personal puberty question. I'm trying to remember. Well, when did the puberty happen thing? And I haven't quite.
It's important because there's patterns.
Exactly. So this was a series of Wednesday evenings in August when I was 12 or 13, going to youth group.
Okay, so, I mean this is like classic prime poltergeist age, right? Because when you go through puberty, it seems that sometimes this is where the anomalies get reported more often than not. If there's a kid around going through puberty, then your chairs might get rearranged.
What I hadn't mentioned is like just bringing it back to memory, the fact that strange things had happened while we were away. So, we left the house and we came back, and then that would be like 90 minutes to 2 hours, which would give plenty of time for neighbors who might have had a key to walk in and have a little mischief on our behalf.
Yeah, I'm curious. Let me just cut in really quick.
Yeah.
Because some people will hear that and they'll already be gravitating towards a whole bunch of different explanations.
Right.
And I'm sure one of those explanations, let's just say like ghosts. Let's just put like a big category that includes everything supernatural and call it ghosts.
Right.
But then there's everything that doesn't go in that category. Like, what are the things that you were thinking of that wouldn't go into the supernatural ghost category? Like someone snuck in and rearranged everything within 2 minutes, or like what did you go through in terms of trying to explain all this?
Well, after the first week, there was multiple instances of it to various degree, but when it happened on these specific Wednesdays, this is when I started thinking, like, should I leave like a trail of dust on doors and fingerprints to see if there'd be human things? This is where I started thinking of like putting up security cameras. This is before trail cams were a thing. I don't think I had a camcorder at that point. So I was, trying to figure this out. Well, how would you get evidence of whatever was doing this activity? But I didn't have a lot of time because I was doing school, and then I have to go to the youth group, and then we come home and I have to go to sleep because there's going to school the next day, this type of idea.
And did you tell anyone as soon as this happened, or did you keep it all to yourself?
It wasn't something I was publicizing because I didn't know what it was.
You weren't like, Mom, Dad, the craziest thing.
They knew because it happened to their bedroom as well. So we had to pick everything back up, which was kind of the annoying aspect of it. So at that point, I was like, I don't know what this is. I didn't have the mental capacity to care. It was just an annoying thing that I had to deal with. And then it happened again. But the third week, I was like, it's whatever. It didn't feel like it was something I should even be thinking about or concerning with. I had other concerns. That was not the biggest concern. But then at that time, when I ran back up to my room, that's when I was like, things were in place. Now things weren't in place within a very small window, like 2 minutes.
If you had put up the trail cams, or if your parents had decided to, do you think the observer effect would have canceled that out and it would have stopped the activity?
That's what I was thinking about more recently. This idea that had I been there to observe it, would it have happened?
Toy Story rules.
That sort of idea. So like if I could keep an eye on something, then something isn't going to happen. But in the periphery of my vision, maybe I could see something out of the corner of my eye. That sort of thought. But to have direct vision on the thing, and maybe I think that's why we've gotten to the point of like security cameras everywhere now, because then everybody will have to be on their best behavior. I'm seeing the security camera up in the corner of this screen. It's like we didn't have those cameras.
It's off right now. The little red light's not blinking, so you can tell it's off.
Oh, it's not recording. Okay. So we can get away with things.
Oh yeah, no one's gonna see this.
Perfect.
I got because in my mind there's two. If I have to boil it down to be overly simplistic and just get two options. In retrospect, looking back at the concept of putting a camera up to see if this would happen that third Wednesday, for example, one line of thought, like one fork in that road, is that observer effect means it would have stopped it, or would have it wouldn't have been caught on camera. But the other one is almost like investing in Bitcoin early. Like, what if you're the person that finds visual proof that gets solidified, just like the Patterson Gimlin Bigfoot footage, right? Like you could be that guy. And I'm not saying that there has to be like ego involved. I'm just saying that out of all the different instances out there, the next person that gets like some really good, conclusive ghost or supernatural footage that's not a Paranormal Activity advertisement, like that's kind of like getting a Bitcoin. Or is that the wrong way to think of it?
I'm not thinking of it in terms of the metaphysical mysteries. I'm thinking more in the mythopoetic mysteries as to, well, what does it mean? What is the meaning of it, and what is the effect of the thing? I'm not going to be able to go back and recreate all of the factors, again, time being either a linear thing, a linear progression, or seasonal thing. It's like I can't go back to account for all the qualities of the situation at the time to recreate it. So
right.
it was
you can't make like, Mercury go back or in and out of retrograde and like align everything as it needed to be for that exact instance.
So the word catalyst, like something triggered, a cosmic trigger was pulled, something happened, and then there was a visual effect of something. I don't have all of the information as to what caused that, but I think it would have been everything leading up to that point caused the exteriorization of inner thoughts. And there's other people involved. So the group mind effect saying, well, my family and the pastor that we had at the time, who was the spiritual advisor, who got the call to say, yeah, we came home. We're a little bit upset about something. Can you offer us some guidance and sort of like a soothing, calming voice of reason? And then later on, when I spoke to him a few years ago, I saw him again. And I was like, "Do you remember that those Wednesday nights when you get a phone call from us?" And he said, "Yeah, I remember." He said, "I think they maybe had caller ID, or they just had a sense of who it was going to be." And his wife was like, "You don't have to answer the phone right now. You don't have to answer that call." But being a man of the cloth, that is the calling. When someone calls, you need to be on call and answer the call to provide whatever sort of guidance necessary at the time.
So you, your parents, and the spiritual advisor of the cloth, at this point, is anyone thinking demonic or possession or haunting or anything in that genre of words, or is everyone dancing around saying things? Do you know what I'm getting at? Like, because like I assume that if it's your house, you don't want to be the first one to drop the D word, right? You don't want to just drop that D until someone else says it. Like you almost want a person of the cloth to imply what it means, and otherwise, it's almost like a home inspector. You're just hoping that they're just like, yeah, no, everything seems normal. Like sometimes the house settles, and that's what's causing this weird supernatural like phenomenon.
Yeah, there was that immediate sense of call the pastor. It's like a crime hasn't been committed, so you don't call the police. The Ghostbusters are in a movie. They don't have a real life counterpart. So then who do you call but your spiritual advisor? And that's his job. But he's not equipped to handle the job of going above and beyond figuring out the metaphysical mysteries of the thing. The point is, there's young children involved, they're a young family, they're in our church. We just want to de-escalate and calm things down. Recognizing that it may be spiritual warfare in that sense that there's some sort of oppositional thing happening to cause sort of a friction, which would catalyze the event in an exterior way. And I'm saying that's where I came across the phrase catalytic exteriorization phenomenon when I was doing some research for it.
Man, I've got questions for people that aren't even here right now, and I'm just thinking that this concept of a spirit that's trying to communicate, or some kind of, maybe I'm assigning malevolence to it, because that's ultimately, it's like, if it's supernatural, I don't understand it, so I'm afraid of it, so I guess it has to be evil. But I'm thinking, like, it could harm you. If something can rearrange your furniture, then it could also do that while you were in the house and rearrange it right on top of you and technically kill you, right? Like, there's versions where I've heard a lot of different people have ghost stories that I know, of people that I don't question their credibility whatsoever. And one of them is just like big items just being like knocked off of top shelves or cabinets. And I'm always thinking, like, well, what if you just happen to be on the ground looking under a cabinet or something, and this thing falls from, 6 or 7 feet up, and it just like slams on your head on the right angle. Technically, these would seem just like, oh, the windows rattle and things getting off the shelves. That implies that it could kill you. Like, something could murder, like a ghost could murder you. And again, forgive my like just oversimplification of this, but that's essentially what it boils down to. No.
This is where I take a step back to say that I'm not thinking in terms of, again, the metaphysical sort of opus operandi. What is modus operandi? What is going on here? I'm going to have to use some foreign words to sort of work through the language of describing the ineffable in some ways. Like, this is something that you don't talk about in polite society. People are going to be very uncomfortable to bring this up. There's no easy way to say, okay, we're going on a metaphysical journey together. Prepare yourself. We're going to have to face reality.
Well, this is relative too, again, right? So if you were to take a sampling of the people in your zip code, for example, yeah, there'd probably be people that are like, what a weirdo, like, don't call me again. Maybe even put out like a trespass on you. But if you were, say, able to get into like a specific psychology / like MIT person's, like reading group, now all of a sudden you could have like your actual like Venkmans and like your actual Ghostbusters. Right. They just don't realize it yet. But there are groups of people that would be wildly fascinated and actually have resources to investigate this in like extreme depth.
It's like, yeah, okay, an earthquake happened. Let's send in the geologists. They're only going to see the after effects.
Yeah, true.
So it's like you call in the Ghostbusters. The underlying assumption that there was a cause followed by an effect, of which I witnessed the immediate effect. See, I was the only person. So I was the only witness of what seemed to be an immediate effect, because I was in the space. I left the space, had an inkling, oh, I got to return to the space. And when I returned to the space, whatever had happened. The exteriorization of the phenomenon. If there was some sort of getting all the kids in the van to go to church, and there's that sort of, I don't, it's like, I want to stay home tonight, or I don't feel, it's like, no, we're going. Well, all of that sort of psychic energy together of, we're doing the thing, you can't say no. And there's some psychic pushback to say, I'd rather not do this. That being in the air. I mean, certainly that's what we're looking to apply a reason to it. But I have to step back and pause the tape to say, why do we think that we had anything to do with anything? We were just at a place in time, experienced something, and then maybe it didn't happen after that. So when it happened 3 times in a row, then it's sort of like, okay, this seems to be a pattern, but then we can't predict accurately a 4th or a 5th time. We don't know.
At the time, or even now, do you question your sanity over this event?
This is me not questioning my sanity, but rather stating, again, how I felt then was, I don't know. And the adults in the room here, they don't have a sufficient answer. So the best they can do is just calm things down, de-escalate, and offer some spiritual support, some prayers for peace and guidance and this sort of thing to calm
That's
things
so
down.
weird. I don't know. It's insufficient. It's wildly insufficient for me that would be the answer. Like it would eat away at me. I would think of nothing but that event for the rest of my life.
That's why I'm saying, as a symbolic representation of the strange reality, the image is forever ingrained in like deep neural grooves in my gray matter for this thing. And then other events as well contribute to that. So what I'm saying is my own worldview is framed by the things that I seeked out, and then the things that I just was a witness to.
Did you ever, at the time or even afterwards, I know you're saying that you weren't trying to figure out what caused and how it happened, but I feel if I was in that position, and I know we're not the same person, but I'd be thinking like, what did I do to cause it? Was it like because I saw that Marilyn Manson poster at Funko Town? Is that like, is it my fault? Did I watch a scary movie? Did I, eat after midnight?
Sure.
Did I get water on me? Like, what did you ever consider like it was your fault and that something you did contributed to it?
Like the placing the guilt on a certain party, that was certainly thoughts that were had. But again, being able to de-escalate my own mind to say, you know what? Let's just wait and see a little bit.
What about anyone else? The spiritual advisor, parents? Did anybody at any point try and say, here's what's causing it, or this might be the cause? Or it was just 100%, let's all just say a prayer together and calm down and have some tea?
There was probably conversations between different family members about it that I was not privy to, and maybe I didn't want to be a part of.
It's his fault. It's Marcus's fault. I saw him playing Final Fantasy VIII. I know.
Well, it was, at that point, it would have been Legend of Zelda on Nintendo Entertainment System with the gold cartridge, and the manual had, symbols on it. I mean, the printed manual for Legend of Zelda had these really strange symbols on it, and it was this fantasy adventure.
But it has the Triforce, which could be construed as the Holy Trinity, though. No?
Right, but the idea that certain totem objects in one's home could have a resonant effect, and only having pictures of Christ and crucifixes and Christmas trees, all the Christian accoutrement, somehow would have the overall resonant effect of, this is a Christian family, Christian home sort of thing. So maybe that would outweigh one little Triforce over there.
Again, I'm sensing a small pattern here that if the devil got a foot in the door to your soul, it sounds like it would have been through video games, because video games, for whatever reason, doesn't sound like you had an access to a good selection through just the Bible-friendly stores where you could get your music or your books or everything else from.
Well, I don't want to go on the complete tangent of purchasing unlicensed Nintendo Entertainment System games through a Christian book distributor catalog to receive Bible-based video games through Wisdom Tree. So I had every single Wisdom Tree NES game, and they're oftentimes Christmas presents and Easter presents.
Those ones are, by the way, go for a lot of money on eBay. Just I know that that's not what your vibe is, but I'm just letting you know.
Having them complete in box, yes, I understand. Yeah. I understand the burden of having those relics complete in box with everything in them. Yeah, I understand that.
You have them complete in box? Wow, this is amazing, man. Okay, all right. So
because they were purchased brand new. So I remember the tax return season. Now we got a little bit of extra money. Now we can finally purchase the overpriced brand new video game from the catalog.
What was overpriced? Because I remember video games at that time new were like $50-$60 if you went to Toys R Us or something around this time period.
This was after the Super Nintendo was released, so they were still selling them from the catalog at full price. And at some point I recognized it made more sense to go to a used store to purchase a inexpensive game because I might not like it. But my parents' attitude was, if they're going to play video games, there should be some Bible verses in them. So they were willing, as were other parents, willing to pay full price for the new object because of the spiritual quality of the thing.
Let me ask, in your opinion, did any of that work? Did it make you more receptive to Bible verses that your parents were buying you Bible specific games, or do you think it had no impact?
Well, having the scripture memorization certainly sets a framework from which I will have like the instant recall, or the thought that comes to mind as a reaction would be a Bible verse.
So you're saying that you were able to use the Bible video games as mnemonic devices to memorize different aspects of the Bible. So there's certain times when you're accessing Bible information, you're calling up like the Noah's Ark, Mario Brothers bootleg.
Well, so there was a game called Spiritual Warfare, which was basically a Legend of Zelda clone. So it was a top-down view, and you'd go around and get objects to be able to interact with the world. In this game, they had fruits of the spirit. So you're a character walking around the map hurling fruits at sinners and cities, and then little demons would get out of them, and then you have to shoot the fruit at the demons to then make sure that their soul was saved.
Were they just swapping out sprites and music from actual Zelda? Is that how they were making these games?
They were a company called Color Dreams, and they were kind of doing like a reverse engineering sprite swapping thing. What they did do is they had their secular version of the game, and then they swapped out sprites to turn into a Christian version of the game.
Smart.
So there was this skateboarding game where you're a cool skateboarding guy and you're trying to save your girlfriend who's about to be disrobed by the bad guys. And at the end of each scene, she'd have less and less clothing. That's not Christian friendly. Let's call it Sunday Fun Day. And now the story of the game is it's Sunday morning and you're trying to get to church on time. So they
on your skateboard.
So the skateboard remained, the enemies remained, the end screens changed, and then they added some sort of spiritual component to say that this is a Christian skateboarder going to church.
What do you think? Let's take that example. Like right now, for you, I don't care what you thought at the time, but like right now, do you think that that's a case of your money is going towards a company that ultimately is doing things that you're opposed to, or is it that like you're still thankful that the company provided a Bible skateboard game? Like they could have just not provided anything at all, and then you wouldn't have had a skateboard game to play.
It's like that meme that we have today where it's like, we have Zelda at home and it's Sunday and it's a spiritual warfare game, or we have that at home, but it's Salty, the singing songbook. It's like not quite a replacement for it. It's not quite swapping out certain things to make it Christian approved. And I did want to talk about fan edits in terms of like movies where maybe certain things have been removed from the film to make it more family friendly. Or like when you ride on an airline, they'd have like the airline approved film where they'd remove certain things that could be offensive. Like any movies about airplanes crashing would not be shown on the in-flight entertainment in certain movies.
Except when Loose Change came out, they played it on certain Virgin flights as a promotion.
That's interesting.
I don't think they kept it on long, but they definitely did that. So but the ultimate question I think that I'm stabbing at is do you have any view on the company itself that it's either A, profiting off of Christians while not being Christian itself, because they also had this more illicit version of that same video game, and if they were truly Christian, I guess, like setting like an unrealistic bar, then they wouldn't have even made that the nude version. They only would have made the Christian version. So is it that the company itself should not be supported, and ultimately like no one should have been even buying the Bible skate or die game because the company's making this other filth? Or is it that let the company do what it does, laissez-faire attitude, but like we will purchase this Bible friendly version because we want our kids, or you might personally, like, I want to just consume Bible friendly media. So like, is there even like a moral debate in your head?
Clearly the market decided that they wanted these religious versions. And when I talk about the joys of walking into a Christian Bible bookstore in the 90s, there was a whole mystery on the shelves of what any of this stuff was. And again, buyer's remorse, who knows? You'd feel bad to bring it back because you didn't like the thing, so you'd sit with
it. You'd learn to like it and make them all acquired tastes, is what I'm hearing.
There is that aspect, and the idea that in America we would celebrate Easter and Christmas and birthdays with gifts was already well established. Now, what those gifts were going to be, well, here's a whole catalog of safe things that you could circle. It's not like the Toys R Us catalog or the Fleet Farm Christmas catalog or a Sears catalog. No, it's the Christian Book Distributors catalog, which were sent to pastors who would then use that catalog to purchase tithing baskets, like felt tithing baskets, and wafers for communion, and communion table, all the accoutrement that would go with religious ritual and running churches and things, plus books to put in the Christian library. Some churches would have libraries where they would buy the media and put it on their shelves. So whether it was the church, the families, the homeschool, there was people flush with cash buying this stuff. So they kept selling it and they kept producing it.
What denomination were you again?
Pentecostal.
Do Pentecostal believe in holy water?
Do they believe in it? I was more familiar with the idea of anointing oil, and the catalog would sell anointing oil in little jars. So a lot of the deacons would carry the anointing oil in jars with them in like pocket size, kind of like a trial size cologne type container. So like just a little container.
Is there any expectation that anointing oil would have the same properties as holy water is usually ascribed?
Well, the symbolic representation of going through the ritual and having the authority of being a deacon in the church, ordained, having the credentials to then use the oil as a physical manifestation of touching the person and leaving the trace of the oil in a cross on the forehead. Now you've been blessed, you've been anointed. And that was one of the things that happened after the Wednesday night event, where we came home, we prayed, we were all anointed, and then we calmed down and went to sleep. And then it's like, well, let's get on with our lives here. Let's not continue fighting a battle, because again, who's to say it's even a battlefield? Now, I'm at the point to say, right time, right place, or I was just at a place and then things happened, this type of thing, where it could be completely acausal. So this is where we get into the idea of synchronicity, where a broken clock is right twice a day.
Well, I don't know if acausal is the right word. Acausal would be like without cause, period, right? because clearly if we're laser focusing on this one particular, and let's combine all three as if it were just one, but I understand the repetition emphasizes it. It makes it more than just a false memory, especially after the third time. This is something that is actually changing physical reality in some capacity objectively, right? Like was not, in your mind, this is not a subjective thing that you were going through, that maybe you're just seeing things on that third time. Is that a right assumption?
That is why I brought it up in the first place, because it was witnessed by my family and the pastor. So the group mind was not a group hallucination. It was physical. In terms of the metaphysical, that's where I step back and say, I'm not hot. It's not a fresh crime scene. As soon as other people walked in and we started moving things around and just like putting things back together, it's the crime scene is now influenced by other things. So it wasn't a hermetically sealed event in time that could be studied by anyway.
I get it. Yeah.
So I went into the folkloric, mythopoetic interpretations, which then led me to Carl Jung, who was writing about some of this stuff. So that's where I stumbled across the phrase, and I don't have the exact memory of where I found it exactly, but I wrote down the word catalytic exteriorization phenomenon. And now recently I was like, I'm going to track down the source of that phrase, having an understanding of the meaning of it in my own mind and wanting to understand what the literature says. So in my search for, this is going to get a little literary, a little academic, but that's kind of what Jung and Freud are. They're food for the academic grist mill, where people are just chewing on every word they say and then writing books about it. There was a guy who translated the book from the German, and that's where I found the phrase. So Gerhard Wehr, W-E-H-R, wrote the oh, come on, he exclaimed, that's sheer bosh, as a character reacting to someone saying that is an example of a catalytic exteriorization phenomenon. So I will jump to the chase to say that was a phrase found in translation, not lost in translation. It was a phrase created, as far as I understand it, by Gerhard Wehr to explain what was being in the German. So he used his knowledge of the English language to make it more colorful, to give it
how accurate is the translation? Because the way that it sounds is, if it's a catalytic exterior, what was it?
Phenomenon.
Is that the catalytic exterior phenomenon? That's the correct phrase?
So break it down one word at a time. What was the catalyst for the exterior, meaning not in the mind, but in the physical manifest matter reality? So there was a catalytic experience that was inner, brought manifest in the outer world, and then together it's the phenomenon of the event. So that's the phrase that I began looking into and finding out that it was going back to the so-called event where Carl Jung was in his office and he was discussing synchronicity, and then he heard the loud rap in the bookcase, and then he pointed to it and said, see, that's an example because of the timing of the thing, because I was speaking about how it's not all in the mind and it physically manifests in the real world. And then a loud bang knocking in the wall of the bookshelf, and then he pointed to it because on the timeline it happening outside
this sounds like
control.
Synchronicity. He's describing a version of synchronicity that involves something like a physical thing happening while you're talking about it or referencing it.
Correct. So he's saying there's an example of it.
Okay. I mean, here's an example that I went through recently that I guess it seems like a unique experience, but I don't necessarily know I ever like try and find a phrase for it. But I was talking to a friend, and we were talking about a very specific person that you wouldn't even expect for anyone to know, and that person calls my friend mid conversation as we're talking about them, and it was like, I mean, there were acquaintances, but not friends of any kind, and it was just wild that, and I'm sure everyone's gone through something similar where like you're thinking of a thing and then the exact thing happens and you're like, damn, did I actually have any impact on that whatsoever? And you don't know because you can't capture that moment in time and analyze it in the future.
Precisely. So that's where I was explaining to you last time how my worldview just sort of came together in this way to say, well, of course, things are strange, and there is another layer of reality beyond nuts and bolts reality.
Beyond the Bible or compatible with the Bible?
How would it be incompatible with the Bible?
I mean, are you asking the questions now? It's a pretty deep question, but I mean, it does seem that there are things that would be objectively incompatible with the Bible. For example, complete denial of the Holy Spirit. Although maybe I'm giving away a very specific denomination's ruling on that, right? But that would be one thing, is that if you were to advocate suppression or ignorance of or apathy of the Holy Spirit, then that would technically be incompatible with some versions of the Bible. Or am I being too hardlined to make that firm of a stance on that?
I do remember that being kind of the one unforgivable sin. It's like, sin can be forgiven, but the one unforgivable sin is blaspheming against the Holy Spirit, and that's a side theological discussion for another time. But that was the one thing to say, well, if you were to blaspheme against the Holy Spirit, let me phrase it this way. If you were going through some sort of chaos magic ritual thing where the goal was to break apart from a religious tradition, you might attempt to do a ritual where during the ritual, whatever it is, you would blaspheme against the Holy Spirit because you've never done it before.
A black mass. Like a whole, like the unholy Eucharist and a black mass where you basically profane everything and invert everything.
If you were to join a group to do it, that would be the working of the group. If you were to be an individual to say, okay, I'm at this crossroads here where I'm just annoyed by everybody in my local faith community. I'm just going to try to see what happens. And then you do the thing that you were told to never do. And then does lightning strike you down in that moment, that type of thing, which sometimes there are immediate reactions. Sometimes it's more delayed, but the course of the person's life after that, does it completely unravel? Do all of their relationships just fall apart? Do they turn to drugs and alcohol and all the coping mechanisms? Do they have a complete mental breakdown? Maybe. For some people. Maybe for some people. I was fortunate to not have a total mental breakdown over all of these little strange things. In my mind, it was just interesting. I didn't find it particularly frightening. For me, I think the most difficult part was the emotional reaction of other people around me, because I wish that they would contain their emotion in such a way that it wouldn't spill over. So
like what? Did you have people like freaking out over this when you told them?
Again, being the messenger to say that our reality is a little bit strange, this could certainly break people. So I found out to be very gentle in introducing these topics.
So give me an example of how you introduced it before you knew that you had to be gentle about it. Like, what would the icebreaker be? Like, hey, Marcus, hey, man, I haven't seen you for a few days. What's going on? What's new since last Wednesday? I haven't seen you since last Wednesday.
Again, wouldn't bring that to that social situation. Would not the right time.
But it came up at a certain point, right? With like some friends that eventually you broke the news to them. I'm sure to like test the waters.
Not right away, and only after they have gone through enough other interesting sort of I wouldn't call them diatribes, but sort of diametrically opposed journeys of the mind to say, can we play in this area or is it not a safe? You kind of test the boundaries with people a little bit.
Well, I mean, is there a fear of being ostracized from like a small niche community that if you start being the weird ghost boy that like now none of your friends want to play anymore?
Or the opposite.
You attract all the goth chicks? So win-win, as it sounds like.
Again, yeah, that's sort of the dynamite that you're trying to deal with. Do you diffuse a situation or do you use the dynamite in your favor to blow some shit up and cause a ruckus? And
I mean, if you want a Nobel Peace Prize, you use the dynamite. It's what it's named after.
Right. Yeah, I mean that was sort of the Wolfgang Pauli talking to Jung, and they're writing all these letters back and forth to each other. So they're documenting all this stuff. And I had a quote about how I think Jung was basically saying, while I'm alive, don't publish an autobiography about my life. So he already understood the complexities of a rich inner spiritual life that could not be written in a linear autobiography where you start with chapter 1, birth, and then it ends with death, and then the afterward as well. This is the effect Carl Jung had the lives of people around him, this sort of thing. So he was already warning against that. And probably because of this phrase that I found, catalytic exteriorization phenomenon, by some guy who translated it into the English in, I think, 1985. So this was the time when Joseph Campbell was on PBS talking to Bill Moyer, and they were bringing out the, was it the Power of Myth series?
It was the Power of Myth, yeah.
So this is where I'm now going back and recognizing that I remember reading in the TV guides, Joseph Campbell, Power of Myth, having a sponge-like mind just absorbing all this stuff and knowing that, Hey Arnold is what I'm going to watch tonight. But as an adult, I'm going to be able to go back to review all of these media things that we have one television in the house. We're going to watch the Goonies tonight, eat a Bigfoot pizza. That's what we're doing. All 5 of us are sitting there and watching it. But as an adult with multiple screens and more time on my hands, I can pursue other research methodologies in my own time over the course of my lifetime. So where I'm at now is I found the phrase catalytic exterior phenomenon that was attributed to Jung, realizing that as far as search engines and AI and all the search that I could do with what was available to me, during the last month, I did not find that exact word for word translation. So what it was is from that Gerhard Weir translation, and it's not even considered to be the best. So the actual phrase from Memories, Dreams, and Reflections, which was published in 1963 as the English edition, says, I was sitting opposite Freud in his library, and we were discussing the paranormal. I had defended the idea that such phenomena could be connected with the psyche. Freud was of the opinion that they were to be explained solely in terms of misinterpretation or sensory illusion. I had not yet finished my argument when a loud noise came from the bookcase. Some translations say cabinet or wooden cabinet. We both started, and Freud looked at me with a startled expression. There, I said, that's an example of a so-called catalytic exteriorization phenomenon. Freud was startled, but then dismissed it as a mere coincidence. So to me, that is more of a mythopoetic retelling of the dialogue that Freud and Jung might have had, whether or not they were actually in his office at the time. This goes back to a creative retelling of an event. So when you write a comic book and you know you've got a certain amount of panels to get the message across, how do you get directly to the point in the panel with the fewest amount of panels to set it up? And this short paragraph gets right to the point because it mentions it's not a mere coincidence. It could be misinterpretation, and it shows Jung's view of the thing versus Freud's view of the thing. But as I've stated already, this wasn't their view of the thing. This was another guy's view of the thing who was writing his book. And then later it was translated to English. So that's where the actual phrase originated from.
Okay, that's very specific and interesting. I'm wondering, what do you think of Freud's stance on that? About let's say that you called your spiritual advisor when this had happened,
Sure.
and the spiritual advisor's like, "Oh man, I got this uncle from Germany. Like he's got some cool ideas. Let me call him over here." And Freud shows up, and Freud's like, "This is you misinterpreting like some kind of a phenomenon and or like a sensory illusion." Like, would that have just been like, "You don't know what you're talking about, bro. Like this happened 3 times in a row. It's not that."
That would be sort of a black and white either or explanation, which I very quickly found out to be a limited worldview of thinking. So to make things so simple as to shave off all nuance and say this is clearly demonic because we represent the good thing. So anything that is an annoyance to me somehow is a spiritual attack, would be to say that I would always have to be engaged in warfare on that metaphysical level.
You could stay at that same metaphysical level and invert things and say like, well, technically in this life, unless we're in hell already, which is a whole nother discussion, but like in this life right now, wouldn't it seem that like the things that an angel would do to you, it would almost be being corrected by a parent, where it might not feel great. Like if an angel has to interact with you in this space,
Sure.
It might actually be uncomfortable or discomforting, versus something that provides just nothing but incarnate pleasure in the material realm, like a pure Saturnian urge. Maybe that would be more likely to be demonic, so that things that scare you or hurt you or shock you could also be good things, and that's how we're misinterpreting like angelic influence as demonic influence and vice versa.
Sure. So I will just go right to where my mind is thinking immediately. It's the idea that because there is children involved, this is on the cusp of puberty and being a teenager, which leads into adulthood. Because there are children involved, I wondered at some point if this was sort of the stage show to say, see, the spiritual reality is real, and this was all the adults putting on this sort of kind of a live action role play of a spiritual scenario to then cement the idea in our minds. That was a thought at some point to say, again, going back to the idea, like, do I trust the adults?
Right. So in other words, you'd almost be envisioning like dad dressing up as Santa Claus and putting all of the presents under the tree. Like maybe the adults are putting on this big show for the sake of the kids, but now there's a version where adults are going into a house and rearranging furniture just to be like, see, we told you, like this spiritual warfare does exist and supernatural does exist.
I'm saying that was one of the thoughts that came to mind, and any sort of thought that my limited mind could think was not really a pleasant sort of thought to have. So I was, if it's a traumatic experience, how does one cope with that? Or to sort of minimize. It's like I did not want to maximize it. I did not want to minimize it. I did not know the shape of the thing. So my wisdom at that point became, I don't have the tools to measure or to talk about or explain. So that's just one of the mental images that's going to be filed away for now. And maybe I can completely forget about it, and then it's fine. Go on with things.
Well, apparently not, because it sounds like it's not still tucked away in that file collecting dust.
Correct. So there are other instances of things being filed away. I mean, little things written down on sheets of paper, little journals, memories. And okay, so I will say that the thought that writing things down makes them real or true in some way. So this is the idea of like, it's like a hyper sigil or something. Having the idea that if I write things down, they would need to be a true account, meaning not clouded by my imagination or my emotions or what my favorite interpretation of the thing would be.
Which seems impossible, literally, like, because this is the same thing with even eyewitnesses in court cases, that you just can't get over the fact that people patch different things. Like the way that our senses work, the very nature is of an act of patching things together and filling in gaps that we can't fill ourselves.
Correct. So in watching the media of the time, all the like unexplained events and It's a Mystery or It's a Miracle, these sorts of chicken soup for the soul programs where they'd collect real life anecdotes and then they'd reenact them dramatically. I would see a lot of those shows and I'd laugh at them because I immediately kind of understood that the writer, director, producer had a say in what the event was going to be. So it wasn't the actual event being described. So there was a separation there.
Give me an example.
The memories of watching, I think, PAX TV at the time where they have It's a Miracle. And the story headline would be, a mother forgets to set her parking brake and her infant toddler crawls behind the car to follow a ball. And then the tire goes over the infant and the mom races out and has superhuman strength to lift up the tire and grab the baby in that instant. And it's a miracle. So where did this strength come from? The weak mother who doesn't have the arm strength and in another situation could not lift the vehicle. So then my thought at that point was the tire itself was not causing damage to the child because it was the appearance of such. So the distance might have been misjudged, where it was like, the tire was over no, that it might have been like 3 feet away. But now the story is told in such a way where it was a miracle I saved the child. And then due to the retelling of the story, the believers in the situation want the miracle to be a miracle. So the details of it are shaped and influenced by the retelling of it to make it more miraculous over time.
This is actually a really good example, though, because I remember this exact same, like word for word, the exact same story about the mother and the infant, and she can lift the car. Where does she get all this superhuman strength? That you could be completely secular, atheist or agnostic, and this story still was like, yeah, man, just it's crazy. It just shows you how how the human body can work, and like the mysteries of what we don't know or are capable of, yada yada. Like it didn't even necessarily have to be interpreted as some kind of a religious miracle. So I think everyone went through that same exact scenario. And some people were just like, man, it's crazy what, science can show us what we're capable of, versus, man, it's crazy how God can work through us.
That's really the individual having encountered the, I'll say, myth or the fable or the story, and then that feeds their need in that moment. So if there's a moment of spiritual crisis and that story gives them the idea that you can be strong when you feel weak, and when a challenge that seems insurmountable arises out of no cause of your own, again, we're talking cause and responsibility and blame. It's like things just happen. You will be ready, and then you do the thing. Don't be afraid of your lack of courage. Like Boy Scouts, always be prepared type of a thing. This is why the spiritual guidance is, remember these Bible verses, listen to these music, ingest this content, because life is going to be difficult, and these sets of tools will then provide the strength and the courage and the comfort. This is sort of like the power of positive thinking. Might get into like Neville Goddard and listening to affirmations, and then how those have real world effects in the physiology of the brain, neuroplasticity, this type of thing.
How, if we were to use neuroplasticity as a metric, do you think that there are certain Christian denominations that have more neuroplasticity and others less?
Yeah, absolutely. There are a lot of different churches. There's a lot of different. So when I say church, in my mind, I'm speaking of the building in your community where people physically go and meet. Now, they will describe all of those people together collectively as the capital C church. I'm talking about a physical building that has a Sunday service, and the people there are constituted the congregation, that sort of thing. Your question of, are certain communities, church communities, congregants, having more neuroplasticity and the ability to handle new technologies and thoughts and things? Certainly there are. Some of them take on a more positive, life-affirming approach to say, we are here to be alongside of you through, births and marriages and funerals, these types of things. That's where you find the community. Now, what seems to be more popular is the opposite of that. Here's the deal. The book of Revelation talks about prophetic end times. And because of these politicians all aligning and the moon being a blood moon, well, let's not be afraid, but now they're invoking the element of fear and uncertainty. So now by providing answers to prophetic questions and giving a framework for evaluating that attracts a different vibe, which makes the tribe a little bit different.
So I want to put words in your mouth. So here's how I'm interpreting that. Almost if you were to isolate this from the religious connotations of it, that positive thinking might be more neuroplastic than negative thinking, or that like doom thinking, and that doom thinking might lead to less neuroplasticity.
The example I'll give is religious substance dependence counseling. So if people are using substances, drugs, alcohol specifically, and have a chemical dependence to the thing, the result of having a spiritual component to the therapy, having a spiritual, religious sort of, there's a thing greater than I am that I can lean upon, tends to have a better result where people aren't reoffending or returning to what their addiction was. So this idea of setting the captors free from their drug, pornographic, whatever addictions that might form around life is tough, going to a spiritual advice. It might even be court ordered at that point, where if it's a court ordered thing and they're like, well, you got to get your life together. Well, there's a bed at the Teen Challenge. This is a real thing that I'm aware of. It's a teen and adult challenge. They do chemical dependency courses where it's a live-in community, and you go and you have a bunk bed, and then you go through the rituals of hygiene, and then cleaning your mind, cleaning your body, and then expelling the chemical dependence thing, and then having to figure out, well, also they have to consider, how do you wean people off of these highly addictive substances? So you have to have that and the spiritual component. So it's not just one or the other. So
well, I don't know. It's an interesting concept. One that I've actually, I want to say struggle's the wrong word. I'll say struggled with, is that the only real options, and I'm being hyperbolic a little bit, but but in terms of like the actual options, it might as well be the only options for NA or AA or a number of other similar groups, is this overall requirement of you have to believe in something that it's more powerful than yourself. And when I got into like a very annoying, nitpicky situation in I'll just say court-ordered version of having to attend one of these, one of the guys running one of these things, he was like, look, kid, does the president have more power than you? I was like, yeah. And he was like, there you go. Like, let's go to the next step. Like, so some people can think of it as like a very utilitarian thing,
pulling a rank card,
right? Like something has more power than you. But I always interpreted that as that you have to believe in some sort of a supernatural higher than. Like, you can't just straight up be a true atheist and then go through NA or go through AA. And I almost wondered if they're shooting themselves in the foot a little bit of like, think about all the people we could be helping if we didn't isolate those that didn't have like a spiritual, I guess, door open. Versus maybe I'm thinking about it all wrong. Like you can't actually fix somebody's addictions without God or without religion or without this concept of something higher than yourself. But I don't know. I feel that would be objectively wrong. There have to be people out there that have gotten over an addiction that it didn't rely on spiritual means, or is that like I'm just ignoring the guardian angels?
We're talking Paranoid American occult topics. So I will say that the aspect of the egregore is already implanted in the person's life. So the person that would go towards a Christian discipleship program to overcome their chemical dependency, it's a chemical dependency. It's a substance. You put it in your body, it changes your body, and now you're told you can't put that in your body anymore. And you choose, because of the insurmountable sort of hole you've dug yourself into, now it's somebody else's concern. So the state steps in to say, you've got kids, you got a family, you got that, you got things that you are responsible for. We need to turn you back into a executive decision machine where you can decide your own life, because there's already the egregore built into that person's mindset. Their neuroplasticity having hardened around certain aspects of faith and religion, meaning the book is the Bible that sets out the morality for culture, and it's the good book, and God is good and the Trinity maybe, but having that basic understanding of, I pledge allegiance to the flag, one nation under God, government, this type of thing, those aggregators exist in the mind. So they work because the person already has that language set installed in their mind. So if someone comes from an atheist family and it's all atheism and the chemical dependency thing is going to be a challenge, they may find faith and spirituality to be beneficial at some point, or they might just have hardened against it entirely. I'm specifically talking about people who have that set of religious ideas already implanted in their mind. Because we're America and we say the Pledge of Allegiance, we say under God, it's on our coinage. Everyone understands that, this is a God-fearing nation, our government, this type of thing, separation of church and state aside. There's an understanding of this is our cultural heritage. And this is what
a little bit. I mean, my maybe completely incorrect interpretation of this, but a lot of the founding fathers were sort of deists as opposed to some specific denomination. And I guess one extra level out of me making more assumptions, but my interpretation of deism is sort of like, if I have to use Toy Story as the example, Andy's gone away to college. He's not playing with these toys anymore. So now these toys are left contemplating like, our creator, did our creator abandon us? Is it because we're bad? Is there something that we can do to correct this? And in reality, again, my interpretation of deism is just like Andy just doesn't care anymore. He's like, God made his thing. He played in his sandbox, and now he's off playing in some other cooler sandbox. And we're just kind of maybe not even an afterthought. It's just like, oh, I think I left that box in the attic at my parents' house, whatever. If they want to sell it, they can sell it. And I'm not saying I'm a deist, but that's my interpretation of deism, and that's my interpretation of the true religion of some of the founding fathers, at least relative to what someone might think as like a pious Catholic, Protestant, Pentecostal approach, where it's maybe more involved. Like Jesus is here with me, God is accessible to me, versus I don't know where God went. He went out for a pack of smokes and he hasn't been back in 20,000 years.
And this will circle around the greater mysteries, the deeper mysteries of this sort of understanding. And there's maybe two worldviews on this position of the mysteries. Is it a puzzle or is it a mystery? Meaning, if all of this is a puzzle that can be solved, then you could do a metaphysical detective work to figure out what caused this and what is the source of this, and then it can be solved through like talk therapy, and then you can solve the thing and then it's resolved. I am more inclined to understand the mysteries as something to be experienced and pondered, and there might never be resolution.
I think there's a third path here too, if I can just inject one. But
okay,
there's the accept everything because it's a mystery. There's the approach of like, let's break this thing down, deconstruct it, find the formula so that we can like quote unquote solve it. Right. But then there's also a version that's like, hey, if we can find out how this thing works, we can make this run, my lights. I can use this to get my job done faster. Like I can exploit this phenomenon, whether or not it's divine. Like if it's objectively real, then I can exploit it and it can turn into the new fossil fuel.
And that's somewhere along what I might call a middle path method, trying to avoid the extremities, trying to not force polarities, because as soon as you begin to force polarities, then you're going to have magnetism or the opposite, where things will attract or push away from each other.
So with you mentioned dichotomy earlier, you mentioned polarization. So I feel like I'm not putting this too much on you, that you can appreciate those flags being planted so that you know what the lay of the land is, that you know, like, okay, here's my relative distance from this other approach. So let me just ask you in a more specific way, do you think that Aleister Crowley was a net positive or a net negative on humanity? Like his very existence and his works?
So having existed and published his writings and his experimentations with drugs and alcohol and mind-altering substances.
Popularized, beyond just published, but popularized.
Certainly. If not him, then someone else, right? At some point, these ideas would emerge, and maybe it's from a third mind. Maybe it's, again, this idea of a hallucination or a found in translation thing. When cultures cross, and I recognize now when we were talking about the faith-based drug and alcohol recovery program, well, maybe you're not Caucasian, white, blonde-haired American with a Christian background, so you might be like, well, I don't want to go hang out with all the drunk Karens in the drunk tank Karen tank over there, and they're going to read their Bible. That's just not my flavor. That's recognizing that. What I'm understanding is a cultural crossroads where there's this mix of like a cosmopolitan thing where you got 3 flavors in your ice cream. So you have chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry, but then you don't eat them separately. You stir it up, it all melts together in the melting pot, and now what is the flavor profile?
The Neapolitan, yeah.
The Neapolitan. I'm saying cosmopolitan because that's how we describe a city. The ice cream is Neapolitan. Well, who brought that about to the city? Did the Italians bring pizza to Chicago, or who claims that sort of idea of the invention? So to answer your question of Aleister Crowley, if not him, it would have been someone else. So then we're talking about the idea of occult currents, of like a river flowing and tributaries, and like the separation of the fresh water and the salt water. That's basically maybe a religious organization to say we are a fresh water. Our church name is Living Waters. We're not about that oceanology, that salty stuff. We're, again, our talking songbook is named Salty after the Psalms, the books of the Bible. It has nothing to do with saltiness or bitterness or going against what is a positive sort of Christian lifestyle. So all these words have meaning, and they're intertwined and interchanged, and like trying to convey a message. This is where there's biblical authority, and you have commentaries, the exegesis on the books to say this is as close to the authorial intent as we can get based off of all this other providing evidence. So this is the best theological interpretation, and we're sticking with it. Other churches aren't really concerned about that because they just want to have the fellowship and have the marriage celebrations and do the baptisms and this type of thing.
You can definitely dance well, just because I'm still trying to pin you down on any yes or no, true or false answer.
So the idea of like rock and roll music causing people to rock and roll, right? I discovered that if your feet are not leaving the ground, then you're just kind of moving around a little bit. It's not actually dancing. So the definition of dancing would be moving your feet to the beat and moving around. But if I'm just like planted and just doing a shoulder movement, well.
But if you don't have feet, though, you could still dance. What about a break dancer that's spinning around on their back?
Are they doing it to a DC Talk song? Is Carman involved? Are they addicted to Jesus?
If it helps you, then yes.
Right.
But I get point being that I'm really interested if you think that. So, for example, Aleister Crowley, I was like, is he a net positive, net negative? Mm-hmm. Your answer is like, well, if not him, then it would have been someone else. But is there no answer from you on whether Aleister Crowley himself was a net negative or net positive? Like, it could have been just some boring dude that didn't popularize it as well as Aleister Crowley did, right?
So the evidence that exists for me having this opinion exists through the Weaving Spiders occult symposiums that were held on Saturday nights. People would gather together, and when I pitched the idea that, hey, this is our 93rd episode, well, what does 93 mean? It can only mean this one thing. So this is what we're talking about tonight. Everybody, are you ready? There were certain people who were saying that they would not publicly declare that he was a positive force, and that they would only poo-poo him to say that clearly the disclaimer needs to be that we are not advocating for his ideas.
Okay,
my very push to explore the ideas because they are in the public is evidence of me saying that clearly this is a tool and some people could cut their fingers off if it's misused, but to hold it back from adult conversation or to say that it's clearly evil and wickedness, I've never gone on the record to say that. I've said these ideas exist, and as a metaphysical physician sort of working with these tools for healing and wholeness and wellness, clearly the tool set offered through Crowley's rituals have been catalysts for consciousness expansion. Now, whether or not someone's consciousness expanded to the point where their morality tended more towards a gray area, and then they had rationalization for committing acts of terrible things, again, that goes back to personal responsibility.
Right, just because Crowley wrote about doing some of these things, for you to then go and do them and then cite, well, I can do it because this guy wrote a book about doing it, so therefore I'm justified in doing it. So I could see how some people would see that as net negative, and let's just not even bring him up. Or if you do bring him up, make sure you condemn him. There's also a version of this that, again, like I guess my 12 or 13-year-old mind, where there was a genuine concern that if I went and read that Anton LaVey Satanic Bible, which I know now was just kind of like an internet troll post a little bit, but that there was like a very real thought in my mind that, you know, I could go to hell if I go and if I purchase that book and I bring it home and I read it, that there's like something bad could happen to me. I would get possessed or a poltergeist, or I'd get an F, or I'd fall down and scrape my knee, or something bad could happen to me. And that would be the reason, like that thing would have been the catalyst. And I didn't even know who the hell Aleister Crowley was at this time. But Aleister Crowley has, if you feel that way about Anton LaVey, then you could definitely feel that way 100-fold against Aleister Crowley. So it's a very interesting point for me when I hear about other people that are similar, that if they talk about them, they have to put all these disclaimers out. It would almost be if you were doing a, like, hey, did the Holocaust really happen episode? And then you'd have to open it up with a whole bunch of disclaimers like, look, we're not Nazis, we don't believe in Hitler, like all these things. You have to like make sure that you're not associating with this personality. So Crowley is definitely one of those with when you're talking about like religion or occultism. But so you're more neutral on this, it seems like. Is there anyone at all from all of history that you're thinking like that guy was a net negative, like we never should have had that guy?
Yeah, I've thought about that as far as like claims to being the most evil and wickedest man on earth. I would not attribute that to Aleister Crowley or Robert Plant or Led Zeppelin, or
let's say like Genghis Khan,
Sabbath,
or
like,
I don't know.
Ozzy Osbourne to some people could be seen as a very frightening figure because of his stage shows. And then, you know, his final appearance of Mama, I'm Coming Home is like, you're going to tear up watching that. And then you realize this guy was an artist, and that Mama, I'm Coming Home thing, that's going to emotionally move a person. Now, someone who doesn't want to be emotionally moved by a secular artist is just not going to watch any Ozzy Osbourne to begin with. So someone who's not willing to read in his own words Diary of a Drug Fiend, Aleister Crowley, that person is severely limited in their tool set. And would I trust them with greater metaphysical mysteries? No, I would not.
I like that. Honestly, man, I think that you're helping me slowly define a bar that, like, I would prefer that everyone in my talking circle, anyone that I have a conversation with, has both read the entire Bible and has also read Diary of a Drug Fiend and has an equal opinion on both.
Well, I mentioned like Carl Jung's Memories, Dreams, Reflections. That's been translated to English, and now there's audiobook version, so it's more easily accessible. I know there's a lot of people who will talk Carl Jung and maybe call his name Jung, and it's like they've only ever in their own mind read the work in their own mind. They never talked to anybody else about it. And then the way they pronounce certain words, they clearly haven't gone to a Carl Jung fan club to understand, well, we say Jung, it's not Jung. There's people that say Aleister Crowley, and then people who know him, it's Crowley. So if they're purposely or mispronouncing the person's name, that's sort of a red flag of like, are they purposely doing that? But now the idea I want to talk about before we forget it is this idea of authorial intent and like historical revisionism. So going back and watching certain movies on Disney Plus, for example, there's going to be a screen with text to say that this was a relic of its time and cultural sensitivities have changed. Certain aspects of the movie have been changed to reflect modern sensibilities. Now, I understand that children are voracious consumers and they just want to watch all the cartoons. They don't care about what it means. They just want to see it. And a parent's like, okay, that's fine. But at some point, if we watch Star Wars and we have to settle the argument of Han Solo, the content of his character, there's a scene in a cantina where, his little phaser
he
fires
shoots first.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't shoot first, because the version I saw was him reacting to the bad guy and using his weapon as self-defense.
Yeah, but you saw the modified Zapruder footage that's missing like the 13 frames.
Right. So the weaponization of only presenting one version of a story is very upsetting to the artist. There's a movie called Phantom of the Opera, Brian De Palma film. Familiar with it?
You mean movie based on the play?
Yes. The Phantom of the Opera film, De Palma had put in this idea of Swan Song being one of the names in there, and then one of the Led Zeppelin people are like, "No, we're gonna use that idea." So at some point, there's a timeline of who came up with the idea first, and when the film was released on the big screen, before it could be released on the big screen, because of legal reasons, they had to go back and change what would have been the definitive version, final edit of the film, and they had to mask over the Swan Song imagery. It was just in the background, but they had to change that for fear of being reprimanded. So then, before the movie could be released, because of the fear of a legalistic sort of attack on the film creators and the company because of the commercial interests, they volunteered to change the thing on their own. Now, recently, fans have recompiled deleted scenes and released the definitive fan version of the film, and it's been shown in theaters unofficially.
Can you even have a definitive fan edition? Because fan implies like the entire audience. So all it takes is one person to say, I wouldn't have done it that way. And now it's not the definitive fan version anymore.
Right. So now there are multiple versions with slight tweaks in the experience.
Well, just like go on. I was going to say, just like there's 40,000 denominations of Christianity, there's like 40,000 different cuts of different movies where everyone thinks like this is the version of Star Wars that's the real one, or this is the version of Phantom of the Opera that's the real one.
Right. Was there some talk of like release the Snyder cut at some point, and people had
eyes wide shut?
So now the idea exists that because we have the technology right now to take a video file and alter it and then publish it in different versions, that we could experience things differently. Now, this applies to video games as well, where there are fan hacks and homebrews of commercially released games.
Kind of like the Bible versions of the Nintendo games you were talking about.
Indeed. So you could present one version of a media to one child, and then the other child in your own family could see a different version of it, and then you'd destroy the evidence, and then later on they would talk about what they saw, and then they'd get into an argument over the details of the thing.
Well, I mean, that's a real scenario that could have happened from what you were describing. Like you get different edits, or one person sees the theatrical release, another person. But now we've got the same version where, like with AI changing the media that we're consuming, that literally everybody will have seen a different version that just slightly catered it to their perspective. So maybe you get the same script, or maybe the general plot points, or like there will be some kind of consistency, but your version of when you go and see Titanic 2 and my version of when I see Titanic 2, that there will be different enough that we won't be able to like really discuss the small details, but we might be able to discuss the general premise, and it'll be not the exception, but the rule.
So I bring up the tone policing, like microaggressions, like your tone right now is just a little bit loud. Bring it down. Speak to me gently. Okay, thank you. The tone of a movie can change based off of one little edit. Who shoots first? You just flip the frames, like this scene and this scene. No, A goes first or B goes first, or the firing of the gun. I mean, that's pulling the trigger. Who's responsible for pulling the trigger, and were they the criminal in that situation because they caused harm, or were they protecting someone's life? That changes the intent of the thing. So the author writes the story with a certain tone in mind. The movie Hackers had a certain soundtrack, and there are certain jokes in it that made certain characters a little bit more goofy. Someone didn't like that and preferred it to be a more serious picture. So certain jokes were removed, certain soundtracks were changed, and now it's a much more mature picture for the film Hackers. Now, side note, I love the movie in all of its forms because I'm a fan of it. I'm going to want to watch different versions of it, and little changes in it are a joy for me to see because I don't want to see the same movie twice, and I can appreciate the variations.
I honestly think that is the new way that we're headed with media, just on its own tangent. But Let's
Yep.
say that your favorite movie is Phantom of the Opera, or if my movie, I'll say mine's Demolition Man.
Okay.
If
Yep.
like at a certain point, there's one version of watching your favorite movie when you like you know all the lines and you know what to expect. That satisfies one part, but you'll never get that same feeling of like discovering a new scene or like something that takes you by surprise.
Mhm.
And that is what the new media seems to be promising, is that, hey, would you like it that every single time you watch Phantom of the Opera, there's a new guest celebrity walk on that might be a minor role, it might be a major role. And that every single time a new actor or actress comes out onto the scene, you know that now there's another version of Phantom of the Opera that you'll eventually be able to watch, whether you care or not. But if you like that artist, now all of a sudden, now there's a reason, like, oh my God, this new actor is out on the scene. I can't wait to go back and watch my favorite movie again because now they'll be in it.
Well, this is like, if I'm writing an autobiography on my life, I don't want to write it now and have the paint dry because I still have more life to live. So if I'm writing a story and I just want to like cement certain events and then reframe them in a certain way where I control the tone of the story in my authorized autobiography, that might have unintended consequences down the line because of retrocausation and the idea that the past is not in cement. Like physically, whatever happened in the past, due to this conversation today, could change the tone and tenor, like literally change the tone and tenor of events in the past, because we're reframing them now with authorial intent and, again, authority to say, this is my life and I'm taking control of it. So it will conform to my will.
Are you down to do a little bit of PCP with me?
PCP? Yeah, you know me.
Hey, conspiracy buffs, I double dare you to take some PCP, the Paranormal Conspiracy Probe. On your marks, get set, and go!
From 1 to 10, where would you rate the validity, feasibility, reasonability of cryogenics?
Freezing the entire body or the brain?
And thawing it out somehow, either now or in the future, that this is something that we could practically do in theory. Like, how hopeful are you on a scale from 1 to 10 that this is something that humans will do?
I'd give it a 10 because my dad went through the process and it saved his life.
Okay, well let me restate cryogenics. This would be like freezing your entire body, brain, everything, and then thawing you back out in, I don't know, a month, or that reasonably right now the technology we have would imply you would die from being turned into an ice cube, and that we don't have a way to bring you back. So, or I guess I'm asking two things. I'm asking, can we go farther than that right now, or do you think we can ever go farther than that in the future?
Yeah, the process of cooling the body to be able to work on it in your own timeline, it does buy you more time. In terms of putting someone in a chamber and freezing their body and then extracting wealth from the family infinitely until they unfreeze them, seems to be the scam for me. So I'm making the distinction to say that in practice, if someone has a cardiac event, to cool the body immediately, to put cool fluids in their body so you could do work on the heart, that will save you time, precious time, to bring the person back to life. That is real. Putting Han Solo and freezing him and then shipping him across the galaxy and then waking him up, that is science fiction. In terms of selling it, it seems to be a scam because the business creates the business. The grieving family members want their relative to come back, and they're the ones paying it. So there's a financial interest there. So
great point. So give me a number though, from 1 to 10.
10 for the medical procedure, -10 for the Han Solo expression of it.
How about the law of attraction?
If I wear certain pheromones, women are going to like me more.
No, law of attraction of like attracts like, that if you go around putting positive energy into the universe, that it comes back to you. You know, the Secret movie that got really big in the early 2000s.
Not that expression of it, not the little coffee table book of like The Secret, but the hermetic principles behind it. Yeah, clearly 10.
What's the difference between those two?
There is a more childlike wonder in saying, this is my wish for this thing in my life that I need, versus the materialistic output of saying, I need much more than what I currently have, wanting all the health and all the wealth and all the attraction to all the material things.
How about the concept that crystals have magic powers?
The properties of crystals are metaphysical. Certainly. We saw that with the Pope. He touched a big ice cube rock thing, and that was very metaphysical of him.
Is that a 10?
There are fakers, certainly. I'm 7.5.
How about I'm making some of these ones up, but I just wanted to see how receptive you are to any of these being true. That the Black Plague was deliberately engineered by an earlier form of population control.
The Black Plague being some form of illness that isn't quite explained by science or religion, but causes people to become ill, and it spreads like a pandemic.
Yeah, a bubonic plague, but like the general conception was that it was poor waste, poor refuse sort of collection, in addition to rats, in addition to poor food preparation, in addition to the fact that microbiology wasn't necessarily considered a thing, and no one washed their hands. And I mean, I'm sure that you've heard all the different explanations of how something like the bubonic plague originally was created, but all of those imply it was purely nature at work. And I've never really gotten deep in any rabbit holes that stated like maybe that was, you know, someone meddling, whether it was intentional or they just put the bat and the pangolin into the room and things just worked out on their own, but that there might have been human intervention where someone, you know, like they were an unintentional arsonist almost.
When certain landowners build tenements and they stack them up and they want all of the undesirables into one small area, they already know that not everyone's going to have a equal opportunity outcome. So they're already setting them up for failure in a city planning situation. So from that perspective, the people that make that decision and enforce that decision are understanding what the consequences are going to be of putting too many people in too small of an area.
Okay, where's your number on that then? So Black Plague was engineered
in terms of getting people together in a city area with poor hygiene and poor oxygen. In that explanation, that's a certain 9.
How about try to figure out a better way to ask this. The Mayans were wrong about 2012. So either they were wrong or we were wrong about them saying that the world was going to end in 2012, or that we were wrong just about the year and the world still is going to end. There's like a bunch of different variations of this, but just in the general premise, like, should we even care about what any Mayans have to say about any end of the world situation? Like, what, just rate Mayan prophecies in general from 1 to 10, I guess.
You know, again, the intelligent leaders of the tribes understanding that given enough time, creative ideas will lead to destruction. Understanding that as they discover more and more plant substances, whatever it is, over time, there's going to be more ways to create more deaths. So understanding that at some point history is going to converge towards the end of time, they knew that their civilization could only exist before, boats show up and they have to fight a battle to preserve their own culture. I think that's kind of what they were getting at.
I need a number.
The Mayan calendar, 12 months in a year.
Okay, not 2012. How about the concept of, I'm going to just put a list of different buildings. You can take your pick as to which one you gravitate towards. But that the pyramids at Giza, or that old ancient cathedrals that have very detailed, like Gothic style cathedrals, that they're either capable of or fashioned after constructions that were literally harvesting energy, and not just like people were in there singing and emotional energy was being channeled, but that like the construction itself and the placement of the buildings. I think you know what I'm getting at without me having to overqualify it, right?
Right. So the size of the pyramid working as a factory creates a bigger chemical thing that they were working on.
Right.
Than to try to do it in a home lab at a smaller scale.
Or that a cathedral has certain angles and reverberations, and that it's also being used to channel, and that the spires on old churches are actually antennas that are used to like direct energy, essentially equating masonry, not Freemasonry, but just like masonry in general and construction, to like batteries and capacitors and things that objectively harness real electricity and energy.
That word energy is doing a lot of heavy
I guess so. Let's say electricity first, and we can walk backwards from electricity. Is that fair?
Yeah. As far as it being like electricity, free energy, this type of thing.
Sure, free energy that someone can use for a practical mechanical means to like run a mill or turn a light on or whatever. Some very practical use that they can then capitalize on.
I do think that there was a practical use built into the infrastructure that would make people's lives easier. The workload would be reduced due to the function and the shape and the building, the blueprints of the thing.
Okay, well, let's take the pyramids at Giza as an example of that. Yeah. That if you suppose that there was no practical benefit to this, then it just seems like a monumental waste is the wrong word, but like a waste of energy and effort, in that it was superfluous, right? It was something done just to be like, look at all the time and energy that we wasted because of how great we are and how much time and resources we have, versus it actually improved life for everyone. It was like almost an altruistic project that we just don't understand. Do you have any suggestions or thoughts on like what that would be?
I've had the same thought about Bitcoin and what work and problem it's solving, to say that I don't think it was doing random mathematical computations just for mining Bitcoin. I think the computational power of the thing describes the purpose of the thing. Like what it does is what it does. It's not the after effect that we're obtaining. So the form and function of the shape of the pyramid is very specific to what it's there for.
Which is
taking chemicals and combining them in the necessary way to feed a growing population, to create the fertilizer needed for the foods necessary to replenish.
Is correct, because this is new to me, this angle.
Uh-huh.
So that the Great Pyramid, or one of the pyramids, was potentially just like a pharmaceutical lab?
Essentially, yeah, changing compounds.
Where are we talking alchemical, or are we talking like DuPont?
More like DuPont. Like physically, there's and that's how they would support the growing population.
Interesting. Where does this, like, what's the What's the bird's eye view of this operation? That they build a pyramid and then input is X and output is chemicals and GMO and better seeds, or what?
I'm referencing Land of Chem book, Jeffrey.
Okay. Go on.
I leave it to him being the expert, and he explained it in such a way that it made sense. Clearly, it's not used for a tomb. It's not for dead bodies. It's not a monument to the pharaonic governance of the great families there. There was a practical use for the people there to increase the population. Which might lead to like the military use of saying we need to defend ourselves, meaning we need a larger population because we need boots on the ground to defend invaders and that sort of thing. So that was a practical purpose of it. So they got the technology to figure out, well, to maximize our food production, we need fertilizers, because they recognize that you leach all the nutrients from the soil, you're not going to have the return. So they quickly figured out how the lightning strike and the energy in the air could then be funneled and using that as a large science chemical factory seems to be the best explanation for why it was built.
Any ideas on the practical nature of the Nazca lines?
As being viewed from above?
Or why are they there to begin? Is the purpose of them to be viewed from above? Or is there another possible practical scenario for them to even exist?
I do believe that there were airships of some form. So we did have people viewing things from high elevation. I wouldn't say like airplane, but more like a helium balloon type of a thing. And they recognize that we can raise that up, heat it up, and expands, and we can use Hindenburg type of a thing. That's the later adaptation of it. But there clearly were flying machines in some way. I'm not saying UFOs, nuts and bolts from outer space. I'm saying man figured out quickly that birds fly. Let's try and figure out how we can get a bird's eye view. So at that point, if they're having that view from below, marking the lines in there, it could have just been an art installation, man.
Do you think that Lee Harvey Oswald had any influence on JFK's death, even in like a metaphysical way?
He was at the place. He was at the set for the presentation, whatever they were doing there. Physically, he was there. If he wasn't there, I don't think it would have happened the same way. Would it have been someone else? I don't think it could have been anyone else. I think it had to be him.
Him just being there, or him actually taking a shot?
That's the mystery I'm not here to solve today.
Okay, a fair point. Are we living in a simulation?
There are levels of simulation placed upon our reality that we deal with every day. Sometimes it's just bureaucracy.
Okay, let me update that. Are we living in a computer generated simulation? And let me qualify. I don't mean that we're still living in a simulation by a vague description and that also computers are involved with it. I mean like the simulation that we perceive as reality. What's the chances that was created by a computer before we were around, and that's this is the NAAA. I believe in a greater power, and you're like, well, I believe that we are all living in a computer simulation, so maybe that computer is the greater power. Like, do you think that that's a chance of that happening? Like, can God be a computer?
That's a greater mystery I'm still thinking about. I haven't landed on a conclusion to that, so I don't really have a number today.
We've abandoned numbers, I think, a while ago. I don't know if you've been paying attention. Last like 3 or 4, we're just
right, like thumbs up and thumbs down, approved.
I guess, yeah, we don't even need that.
The simulation idea. Again, one tool. If all I have is a hammer. Everything that sticks out become a nail, and I hit it down. If the tool set is simulation theory, I'm not going to trust the guy who's like, yeah, man, it's a simulation, and that's all he ever tells me. It's like there are other mythopoetic worldviews that describe it in different terms. So I would approach it as more of a dream. I wouldn't use the word artificial digital computer simulation. I would say it functions as consciousness dream. That's where I would lean more towards.
All right, I'm gonna end it on this one. That's the most important to me, and I hope I can qualify it enough to get it out of vague answer area. Right. So let's make a couple of assumptions and suspend disbelief just for the premise of answering these questions. Let's say that there is a hell, and that people can go to hell. I'm not going to tell you what the rules are or what the ratios are or anything, but let's just say objectively there is a hell and people can go to hell, and that's all that we know. And for all we know, no one's ever actually gone there, but it's a possibility, or maybe 1,000, or people go every second. Who knows? If that's what's on the table, how many people do you think that are going to hell?
An afterlife where people are punished for being bastards in this life, or being just absolutely reprehensible.
Sure, or maybe there's like a Swedish hell where it's truly like rehabilitation, but nonetheless, it is a non purgatory step, right? It's not a limbo. It's that you're going to go and do some hard time or get cooked a little bit and come back with some stories to tell.
I know there are people that have the opinion that this life is a simulation, it's a karmic cycle, and they are reincarnated to this earthly plane of existence because,
and this is their hell.
Because they were needing to learn a lesson.
Let's pretend that we're older than 15, though, and we've already been through all of those motions and cycles and thoughts, and that we've discovered that objectively we are in a regular, like terrestrial realm. But there is an extraterrestrial realm of hell that is a possibility.
Are we also saying that there's the opposite of that, meaning there's a reward place, like a heavenly place for people to celebrate their victories in life, so that there's the equal and opposite balance of saying at the end of your life, there's a scale of judgment and you're tipped 49%, 51%, and that decides, heaven or hell for the afterlife?
I don't know if that is a requirement, but I guess the way that you described that, if you get 49% versus 51%, you're taking a left instead of a right at this exit or whatever. I guess let's just say yes. Let's say that objectively there is a black and white, an up and down, a good and bad at the end of this. And let me just instead of having to fish around for it, I guess part of the reason that I even asked this is is there something that somebody could do that is so egregious? And again, going back to the unforgivable sin of blasphemy of the Holy Spirit, who even knows what that actually is, or if we can even do it, right? There's not even anything that says, and here's how you do that, because I guess explaining how to do it might be the same as doing the thing. Who knows? But I'm really curious, is there a thing? Is there an actual thing you can do that would be considered an unforgivable sin, or that there's something that you can do that unless you say you're sorry and you mean it, and you look God right in the eye when you say that you're sorry, that you go to hell because you didn't follow the rules?
I have to say yes. There has to be consequences for this life. So I'm just going to agree and say, yeah, there has to be some sort of afterlife scenario where you are punished for your misdeeds in this life. I think this world requires it to function, because if it's all selfish people who at the end of their life don't have any sort of weighing of the scales of their heart, then this experiment has been a failure. This simulation version has been a failure because of the selfishness and the psychopathy that is rewarded in this life means the Mayans figured it out that it's going to end at some point. It can't go on forever because of this aspect of evil, this anti-Christ, this anti-life scenario where a corporation led by one figurehead is going to decide that people need to be in tenements so that the Black Plague will sort them out to reduce the stress on the food systems. That sort of belief that there is no higher purpose for living this life and that it's not a mystery to be experienced or a puzzle to solve, but rather biochemical signals in the brain that creates a hallucination of spiritual ecstatic experiences does not work in terms of my experience of life.
Hey, you've got a great show called The Deliberating Dog-Faced Dudes. That every week, I think, you guys get together and there's a rough interpretation of the format of like a debate over something being real, not being real, for or against, and you're all very seasoned debaters. I think even do you have academic debate experience, or is it just something that you developed over time?
Developing over time, but recognizing the need for having a dialogue that ends with people disagreeing and still being friends is very important. So to recognize,
I'm not sure I agree.
Well, we're going to have to talk about it on a Tuesday night.
Okay. So where can people go and listen to Deliberating Dog-Faced Dudes? I'm assuming you've got a backlog that if someone's hearing about it for the first time right now, they can go and listen to like all the older episodes.
I try to maintain all the relevant links at alanmarcus.com. I do the best I can to keep those up to date. If people need to find out where they are this Tuesday, that will be on the Benjamin Alderson channel. It goes other places, but we'd like to see you in the chat on a Tuesday night. Again, Tuesday nights aren't everyone's cup of tea. They have other things going on. That's fine. So tune into some of the classic episodes where we've discussed different issues, and look forward to future debates on more metaphysical topics where we kind of push back against, is Aleister Crowley the wickedest man on earth? I think that's a great prompt to have. Is astrological, zodiacal horoscope things a net positive for society or just a sham show of snake oil? I think that's going to need to be investigated on a Tuesday night.
I think we might have one. I've got someone in mind for that one. We've been going at it a little bit behind the scenes. So sure. I don't know. Maybe there will be like an astrology true or false debate. Where are you at? Do you have a bias going into that one? If the topic was astrology, real or fake, and you had to pick a debate side, what would be the easier side to pick? From an academic standpoint, from a debate standpoint, which side do you think would be the easy side versus the hard side?
The hardest side would be the person who would want to debunk it and say that it has less than no value. In fact, the harm that has been caused by allowing people to entertain the idea of divination through horoscopes and sun signs has been so delusional to civilization. I think that would be the harder side to defend.
Well, that's definitely of overly biased take on it. What if it's literally just you're wasting your time versus you're not wasting your time?
I think its function is the quality of time, and that's really what it's discussing.
Okay, you're a hard one to pin down, Marcus Allen or Alan Marcus or whatever I can't even pin down your name. That's how hard you make it for people.
I try to make it easy so if people Google it, they're not finding football players.
Okay, it's a fair point. So
the branding of it is such that I try to make it simple and also easily pronounced. It's not a difficult to pronounce name, I don't think, unless the double L's are like alien. Like the alien language, try to pronounce things. There are certain words that I have received that I'm now just putting the pieces together, and it's sort of like, does the definition come first and then the word, or the word then the definition? I've had it happen both ways.
Received from where?
Received.
Like in your brain, written on a piece of paper through the email, just channeled?
Received, leaving it as a cliffhanger.
Intentionally received or unprompted, unsolicited?
Being open to the idea, and I received.
Okay, I mean, part 3 with Marcus Allen at alanmarcus.com. We're going to talk about the voices in his head, it sounds like.
In a fun way. There's a good use of this sort of inward imagination, like an active imagination. And I'm very encouraging of that. I think that in like problem solving, they say if you force yourself to sit down and just write down all the possible ways you could solve the problem, you're generally going to figure it out on your own instead of avoiding the problems and not thinking about them. So to work through difficult things has sort of been my theme and modus operandi, sort of my whole reasoning and rationale for existing in media. And if people would criticize and say, well, he talks too much about himself, well, I like to hear other people share their life stories. And this democratization of podcasts and media and fan revisions, I think it's great. I love the freedom of expression. And in this way, being able to have a conversation that people can overhear, and now they're getting references that they're not familiar with, that leads them on sort of these scavenger hunts to do a little bit of work and discover that there's some really interesting pieces of art and things. And I want to thank you for your interview with Nina Paley specifically. I think that was really, really interesting. And I went on to see what else she's done, and it's like, that's really great. Now, other people are going to listen to Paranoid American and hear other guests that they're going to prefer and they're going to follow and have resonation with. But specifically, Nina Paley, wow, that was an awesome interview. And the idea of like copyright in the mind, like I recognize that the sovereignty of the mind thing was something that I recognized as being important before I had a framework or a language to describe it. Like, my mind is my own, my thoughts are my own, and I can do whatever I want in my head, and that's okay. And not to be fearful and to explore darker things is to say that I'm not suppressing them. If we have a problem with a cultural shadow where there's things we don't want to talk about and then we try to suppress them, well, they sprout up in other ways that are maybe less predictable.
We didn't even, when Nina Paley was on, my whole goal was to eventually get into AI too.
Right.
Because she's an like legitimately talented artist that's been animating and doing comics for like her entire life. But she also is pro AI, at least in terms of concept. And I didn't get to pull her more on that, but it's just another interesting perspective that it's very hard to find someone that has those kind of views and like the staunch anti-copyright view, and even that the idea that copyrights have been sold to us as empowerment, but really they've always been a tool of the publishers to justify why they should be able to get a copyright. And then it's like, oh, but anyone can have one. It's empowering. Yeah, it completely flips the entire concept, because copyright, as you're introduced to it in the American legal system, is like, this is what makes our country great. This is one of the great things that creates these rags to riches stories and pull yourself up by your bootstraps and copyrights. It's all sold as a big package, but it's not American. It's European Euro trash authoritarianism that's basically comes from the same era as like the Black Plague and the bubonic plague.
Right, and that idea of like intellectual property is something that could be trademarked and registered and filed away somewhere. And I was having the idea of like this idea of like spiritual property that belongs to me. Like we all have our own spiritual property similar to intellectual property, where significant life events that have a spiritual, metaphysical, paranormal sort of expression in our lives, that sort of like stamp, like this is why we're in a weird universe. I think those are the experiences that people have. So if we're talking about like dosing a town with LSD for the greater good or for the control of it, have we had that conversation? Like AI
like
is
desperate,
that sort of thing. Yeah. So AI being the tool that we were approaching might seem to be the end of history in some way, but it seems to be the greater reflection of our own creative storytelling, mythopoetic sort of, Carl Jung's archetypal sort of thing, where we're now entering this age where imagine something. If you can have the words to type into a prompt, it can spit something out, which is a lot closer than you could do on your own, struggling to get to a quick result. So it's not going to get you to where you want to be, like 100%, but it's a tool in the journey that we can use creatively for the betterment of the people that we love and trust and want to be with.
I think it scares people too, because it's one reason to not be stuck with the empty canvas syndrome or blank canvas syndrome, where you want to do something or create something or start a new project that you're unfamiliar with. There's always been this barrier of, well, I don't have anyone I can ask, or I don't know how to do that thing, and I don't know where to start. And AI, it does kind of be like, like you're not allowed to say that anymore. Like now you can just go ask AI and at least get what the first steps to the thing are. If you couldn't have already done that, like searching it online. And there's another really unique thing that we're living through in a very egotistical, narcissistic way almost. But it's kind of fun that we get to be the ones that live through this period in time, that in the year 2000 or any time prior than that, if you mentioned AI in your book, in your movie, in your music or anything, you were writing sci-fi. You were a nerd that you probably like Star Wars or Star Trek and anything else. But now movies that come out for the rest of our lives until we're all dead or until the world ends, they can all contain AI and still be a sports jock movie and still be a non-sci-fi, non-nerd movie. And it's such a weird thing, right? That it used to be a hallmark of, oh, I'm watching a sci-fi movie because they just talked about AI, but now it's a real thing that we're all living with, and it's doing the things that used to be considered sci-fi, and now it's commonplace. Or at least it's become, like, over the next 10 years, we'll see people being born that were like, yeah, AI's always been around. Like, what do you mean? It's ubiquitous. We're fish in water.
So Demolition Man we're living in, and it's like the genre of burger punk, where the McDonald's Corporation becomes president of the United States of America. I mean, that was the story of Demolition Man, where it's like one of these fast food companies essentially becomes the president,
won the fast food wars,
becomes the president of the United States of America, essentially. Yeah, and I kind of think that's where we're already at. So science fiction of the past, and now it's like all the movies I watched as a youth that were in the future, I think all of them have, like the Fortress movie, Highlander guy goes into a secure prison facility. The future was 2017. Well, that's like the far past now. Like the
They
Terminator.
were all very
timeline.
optimistic. Even the ones that were about the world ending, they still thought the world was going to end and we'd have cool technology, like ubiquitous technology. None of them seem to have gotten it right, or the timelines are just so way off.
This globalism experiment, I think, is kind of reached its climax in a way where returning to smaller local communities and tribes is sort of the natural reaction to that, and coming to terms with the fact that English as a language may have already peaked, and the Chinese language might be where all the creativity, and they may be making science fiction for their culture that we import. So for such a time, the 1980s and 90s, when a Disney Corporation, America, that worldview was exported to all the other countries, and they just had to put up with our entertainment for a while. The technology's caught up where they can make their own stories, and now we're watching them, their stories, their idea of what the future of Earth is going to look like outside of a Euro-American centric sort of worldview. So I think that's just coming to balance.
This is a fun rabbit hole tangent to go down too, especially when you talk about the English language being surpassed by, say, like Chinese language, or fill in the blank with whatever you want. Mm-hmm. Right. Because if you were to use technology as one of those metrics, it was until very, very recently, but pretty much all programming languages were predominantly in English. They, like, even if you were a Chinese developer and any developer, you're still writing the word if and the word then and end and start and begin. Like it was all English. And then now with AI coming in, we're starting to realize that even AI doesn't necessarily care about the language, that you can train the same or similar results from like image prompting or video prompting or any of these AI. You can train it to recognize English input, and then here's the thing we wanted, or Chinese input, and here's the thing we wanted. And they both kind of work in parity, although there might be an actual decimal point measurement somewhere where it's like, actually AI prefers Chinese. Actually, AI is more specific and precise when you use English. We're not there yet to know which language is better, but it does seem that AI could be a tool that tells us objectively what language is better than other languages for different use cases. Like we might find out that when we're talking about car safety, maybe Taiwanese is the best language to capture all of the different elements in car safety. If we're talking about music, it's probably not German, right? Like there's certain languages that might cater more to certain different things. And it's like, okay, now if we're going to talk about Jung, like now we actually have to talk in German.
Having the understanding of psychology specific to like that Austria area, that sort of area, like they were just working with.
And you got to have a hot mom too.
Indeed. Yeah. The symbolic representation of language and how the large language models interpret sentence structure is quite an interesting thing to do. If you've ever taken like an English translation and then saying, LLM, translate this to Russian, then take the Russian, translate it to Japanese, and then go through 5 language hops and then return it to a literal English translation. And do you get English? It seems that the AI systems are figuring that out, and in this way are approaching this sort of one world unified language. Even if I'm speaking English, you're speaking Chinese, they're still underlying it one symbolic mathematical language. And in that sense, the world is running on that simulation layer.
Yeah, AI is basically making its version of Esperanto right now.
The Dvorak keyboard arrangement.
Yeah. Well, let me cut this off because we've got a million different tangents we could go down, right. And we've already established part 3 is going to be about the messages that you've received. So,
and we don't want the paint to dry. This is like an oil painting, And, next time we're going to go back and smudge it up and alter it again. So this is like our living documents.
Okay. I appreciate you letting me use this show as a vehicle to kind of document these different experiences you've had that I'm incredibly fascinated with. And I'm sure that you've been going over them in your mind. So we have like a record documentation of at least what you think of them at the time of us recording these. So here, hopefully 100 years in the future, someone will be like, we figured out what that phenomenon was. If only someone had about 7 or 8 hours of audio recording to explain different occurrences of this. We've got one of them.
2 of them. This one and part 1.
Well, and part 3 coming up.
And the crowdsourcing of the comments. Please leave lots of comments and engage with this material. It's an ongoing conversation. Recognizing that you and I have a microphone and a face and a setup where we want to talk. There are also people that want to preserve their privacy but have brilliant ideas. So we can find ways to receive messages from them as well. And it's like I have an email on my website for those who feel compelled to respond to the words I'm saying. There is an email to reach me. I would appreciate that if people don't want to leave public comments, private emails. I'm sure you get some interesting emails too at some time. As soon as you send out a call to receive them, they flood in over time.
And I appreciate every single one of them. And even if I don't respond to all of them, I do appreciate it. Leave the comment, hit the little thumbs up button, feed the simulation so at least it knows to divert more energy to this side of the algorithm. So appreciate you.
Yeah, make that AI even more weird, because the alternative to that is a cemented worldview where it is so rigid, there's no flexibility and room for creative people to live. We're living in a time where the fear of AI taking all of our jobs, that's been a warning for a long time. Understanding what provides real world value to people, food on the table, we know what those things are. Certainly, like gardening and back to the land and all of these types of things. Not everyone wants to do that. So living in community is very, very important. Understanding online community is real and we meet each other. That's a real thing. So meet people where they're at and trust them when they say things. And when I say email me. I want to hear your stories. I'm sure there's people that have been holding on to similar, apples and oranges comparisons, but weird things that they're like, I don't know. And they're like, sometimes just sharing it with someone is enough just to let it out and then get on with it. And the paint doesn't have to dry.
These are some of my favorite stories, are the ones where people themselves, as they went through it, didn't want to tell anyone about it because they didn't want to rock the boat. They didn't want to question their sanity or have everyone else question their sanity. And it's more like, I'll put that in a drawer and deal with it when I've got the bandwidth. The exact way that you kind of described it. Yeah. I've got many different friends that have got those kind of experiences with Bigfoot, with aliens, with whatever, just all sorts of spread the entire gamut. Yeah. And to me, maybe it's just a low bar for myself, but when someone's like doesn't want to talk about it, and then like a decade later they do want to talk about it, and there's other people that are also like, yeah man, same thing, where I saw this thing and I've never been able to shake this idea and it's all that I've been thinking about and now I'm ready to talk about it. I tend to give those ones more credit than someone's like, I saw this yesterday and listen to what I said, even if maybe that bias shouldn't be there. It's definitely there.
Are you talking about all the AI written posts on Reddit asking, am I the asshole, with a clearly manufactured story for those upvotes? It's like the social media verification of like, I just want to massage this story to move people. The conversation we're having is not something between two artificial intelligences. To have a video call, face, expression, the hesitation and all of that stuff cannot be mimicked. I mean, it can be rehearsed by like Gemini, Google Gemini, and like they'll make a podcast for you. But the realness of these conversations is so important, and to encourage people to video, join an open panel. It doesn't have to be like deliberating dog-faced dudes, but on a Tuesday night, it absolutely could be. Have to kind of call out people to say, you've been thinking about it, and you're looking for the sign or the reason or the push, the catalyst to exteriorize the things that you've been wanting to plan. This is it. This is your call. Pull the cosmic trigger and get weird things started.
All American stickers, cryptids, cults, and killers. We got all your favorite conspiracies, all that and more on our sticker sheets. Paranoid American stickers, they'll make you smile and snicker. False flags and secret societies, all of these and more on our sticker sheets.
Explore the unique with Paranoid American sticker sheets. Unearth tales of cryptids, cults, and mysteries through each sticker. These won't last long. Get yours now at paranoidamerican.com.
All American stickers, cryptids, cults, and killers. We got all your favorite conspiracies, all that and more on our sticker sheets. Paranoid American stickers, they'll make you smile and snicker. False flags and secret societies, all of these and more on our sticker sheets.
What the heck are you waiting for? Discover the extraordinary with Paranoid American sticker sheets. From cryptids in the night to cults out of sight, each sticker is a unique find. Get yours now at paranoidamerican.com.
Paranoid. Yo. I scribble my life away, driven to write the page. Will it enlighten your brain? Give you the flight, my plane, paper the highs ablaze. Somewhat of an amazing feel when it's real to real. You will engage it. Your favorite, of course, the Lord of an arrangement. I gave you the proper results to hit the pavement. If they get emotional, hate maybe your language, a game, how they playing it well without Lakers. Evade them, whatever the cost, they are the shapeshift. Snakes get decapitated, met is the apex. Execution of flame you out, nuclear bomb distributed at war, rather gruesome for eyes to see. Max them out, then I light my trees. Blow it off in the face, you're despising me for what though? Calculated and rather cutthroat. Paranoid American must be all the blunt smoke for real. Lord, give me a day away, vacate. They wait around to hate whatever they say. Man, it's not in the least bit. We get heavy rotate when the beat hits, so thank us, you're welcome. Fuck the niggas for real, you're welcome. They ain't never had a deal, you're welcome. Man, they lacking appeal, you're welcome. Yet they doing it still, you're welcome.